Again, it's Mr. Stewart with another story. This one is called Cinderella. Oh, excuse me. It's called Bubba the Cowboy Prince. Yes, Bubba the Cowboy Prince, a fractured Texas tale, written by Helen Ketteman and illustrated by James Warhola. Bubba the Cowboy Prince got an armadillo, an iguana, and a cowboy boot. You may got a pet armadillo. Here's our cast of characters. This would be Miss Lurleen and a cow. This is Bubba's wicked stepdaddy. Here's Bubba. And these are his two lazy, good-for-nothing stepbrothers, Dwayne and Milton. So here we go. Once upon a time, there was a strapping young feller named Bubba who lived on a ranch with his wicked stepdaddy and his hateful and lazy stepbrothers, Dwayne and Milton. Bubba's stepdaddy spoiled Dwayne and Milton to no end. But Bubba, well, he had to work from sun up to sundown every day doing all the chores of all three ranch hands, but Bubba never complained. Because the truth is, Bubba loved ranching. That's raising cattle. Dwayne and Milton spent their days sitting on horseback, bossing Bubba around. Get them doggies along there, Bubba, said Dwayne. Yeah, and better watch out for them cow patties, added Milton. You know how Daddy hates it when you track up the rug. Now, Miss Lurleen, she lived down the road a piece. She was the purtiest and richest gal in the whole county. She owned the biggest ranch west of the Brazos River, and she loved ranching too, but it was hard, lonesome work. And after a while, she decided it was time for some companionship. She says, I aim to find myself a feller, one that loves ranching as much as I do, and it wouldn't hurt if he was just as cute as a cow's ear either. So, Miss Lurleen decided to throw a ball. Not that kind of ball, a dance party. She sent invitations to all the ranchers in Texas. Now, when the day of the ball arrived, Milton and Dwayne spent the whole day getting themselves gussied up in their finest duds. Bubba ran himself ragged taking care of them. Hey, Bubba, bring my bolo tie. Bubba, fetch my boots and get them polished. Wicked stepdaddy says, Bubba, you better get them horses ready. It's almost time to go. By the time Dwayne and Milton and their wicked daddy were ready to go, Bubba was exhausted. Still, as they climbed into the wagon, Bubba says, hey, can't y'all wait for me to get ready? I want to dance with Miss Lurleen too. Oh, Dwayne and Milton thought that was the funniest thing they'd heard all day. Why, Bubba, you're sorrier than a steer in a stockyard, said Dwayne. Can you imagine Miss Lurleen dancing with the likes of you? Why, she wouldn't even wipe the dirt clods off of her boots with that raggedy old shirt of yours, and you smell more like cattle than the cattle do. Bubba looked at himself and decided it was true. He didn't have a decent shirt to wear. His boots were downright disgraceful, and he did smell a bit rough. Milton and Dwayne were right. Miss Lurleen would not dance with the likes of him, and Bubba just hung his head because he felt lower than a rattlesnake in a gully. Milton and Dwayne and their wicked daddy went on off to the ball, but Bubba mounted up his horse and headed for the pasture to check on his herd. He noticed the sky was getting darker than a black bull at midnight, and it looked like a Texas-sized thunderstorm brewing in the west. Cow in it. Bubba had just arrived at the cow pasture when bam! A bolt of lightning struck and knocked him off of his horse. Bubba was stunned for a minute, but when he picked himself up, he heard a voice say, Go to the ball, Bubba. Bubba looked around. There wasn't nobody there but him and those cows. Now, Bubba figured he must have bonked the bejeebers out of his bean because it seemed like that voice was coming from this cow over here. She chewed her cud and then she says, Bubba, I am your fairy god cow and I can help you go to the ball. Bubba stood up and rubbed his head and goes, I'd like to go, Miss God Cow, but shoot, I don't even have a clean shirt to wear. And the fairy god cow swished her tail. And Bubba's raggedy old clothes changed into the handsomest cowboy duds he had ever laid eyes on. Why, his jeans were crisp, his boots were shiny, his shirt was dazzling, and his Stetson hat was whiter than a new salt lick. He goes, woo, I look downright pretty. Now the fairy god cow swished her tail once again. And a nearby cow turned into the most beautiful white stallion horse Bubba had ever seen. She says, now you go on off to the ball, Bubba, and have yourself a good time dancing with Miss Lurleen. But you better be home by midnight, because that is when the magic runs out. Yahoo! He shouted as he jumped onto that white horse and galloped off to the ball. Now when Bubba arrived, that hoedown was in full swing. But every time Miss Lurleen finished a dance, she'd just yawn and say, hoo-wee, there goes another $10 Stetson on a 5-cent head. Where's all the real cowboys? And by the time it was Bubba's turn to dance with Miss Lurleen, it was almost midnight. But as soon as she saw Bubba, her eyes lit up. She goes, ooh, well, you're about as cute as a cow's ear. Bubba blushed a little bit, but then he took Miss Lurleen in his arms and started to dancing. Dwayne and Milton turned purple with jealousy. Who is that dude? I don't know. I don't remember seeing him around, but he looks familiar. And the daddy says, boys, you better do something, because that cowboy is winning Miss Lurleen's heart. Is that the prize for the dance contest? How's that work? But as it turned out, Milton and Dwayne didn't have to do a thing, because Bubba and Miss Lurleen were right in the middle of a do-si-do when the clock struck midnight. Come on! And suddenly Bubba's fine duds turned back into the dirty rags he'd been wearing earlier. He looked sorry and he smelled even worse. What's that awful smell? Said Milton. Well, look, it's Bubba, shouted Dwayne. Bubba turned 14 shades of red and apologized to Miss Lurleen. Sorry. And he ran out of there as fast as he could. And she goes, wait, don't run off. But Bubba didn't wait. He jumped onto his cow and lumbered off into the moonlight. And all that ruckus, he lost one of his dirty old cowboy boots. Oh, Miss Lurleen picked it up. She said, this is the boot of a real cowboy and the man I want to marry, and I aim to find him. Miss Lurleen went back inside, and though she asked everybody at the ball, nobody seemed to know the mysterious cowboy. Nobody but Dwayne, Milton, and their wicked daddy, and they weren't talking. The next day, Miss Lurleen went from ranch to ranch looking for the cowboy who owned that boot. When she got to Dwayne and Milton's ranch, both of them tried it on, but the boot did not fit. She was just about to ride off when she saw Bubba riding up on his horse. He was dirty, he was sweaty and smelly from working with the cows, but he was only wearing one boot. Miss Lurleen jumped off of her horse and ran over to Bubba. Try this boot on, cowboy. Bubba took that dirty old boot and pulled it right on. Much obliged, ma'am, he said, blushing. And yes, it fit perfectly. She goes, woo, why, you're my prince in cowboy boots. I'd recognize your smell anywhere, cowboy. Marry me and help me work my ranch. Oh, Dwayne and Milton and their daddy got so mad they pitched a chicken fit. But Bubba just smiled as he and Miss Lurleen climbed onto their horses and rode off together into the sunset. They lived happily ever after, roping and cowpokin and getting them doggies along, don't you know? The end. And yes, this has been a Cinderella story set in Texas. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you come back and enjoy some more stories. Take a little time to read some books and stories every day. And I'll see you soon.